Hey everyone, and welcome to my class guide video on the triangles character in Gloomhaven. There be spoilers ahead, folks, so if you have clicked on this video by accident, then now is your chance to turn back, because from here on out, we're going to be talking about the class in depth and some items along the way that the character's going to find super useful as well. So, you don't want any spoilers, now is your chance to turn off. Is that everyone gone, or is anybody still left? This is going to be quite a long guide, folks. The Elementalist is a very tricky class to talk about. There's a lot of different directions you can go, there's a lot of difficult choices, and there's a lot of complex play in this character. This is not one for the faint at heart, I'm afraid. This character is very crunchy and meaty and other adjectives for types of food that are thick. But yeah, this is going to be a long one. Now, I can't take credit for all of this video. I've taken a lot of inspiration from other guides that I've read and seen, and in particular, I would like to shout out Themris. He's a Redditor who put together an amazing amount of information on this class, and yeah, my build is a variation of one of his builds. So if you really wanted to learn a lot more about this class, really get into detail about all of the different elements of this class, I can highly recommend, and I will put a link in the description down to his Reddit post for you to be able to check it out. As always, guys, if you do enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. We are very close to 1,000 subs on the channel, which is just incredible to me. I mean, maybe we've even reached it by the point this video goes live, I don't know, but thank you all so much for the support. I will still be doing a 1,000 sub special Q&A, so if there is any specific questions you'd like me to answer, like shorter questions that maybe don't warrant a whole video, please do pop them in the comments below, and who knows, maybe it'll make the video. Also, I do stream regularly on Twitch at twitch.tv/mandatoryquest. I stream there every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday, usually Gloomhaven, so you can always come out and ask me any questions you might have there. Well, without further ado, it's going to be a long one, but let's get stuck in to the Elementalist. Okay, guys, so before we get into the build, let's just talk a little bit generally about the Elementalist. So, the Elementalist, otherwise known as Triangles, otherwise known as Triforce, has a lot of freedom compared to some of the other classes in the game, and in fact there are up to 4 different kind of builds that you can go with this character. In this guide, I'm only going to be covering a damage-based build, which is easy to follow and execute. In terms of party composition, this build is going to work with all group sizes and with mostly any party comp. I will say it's worth noting that having multiple element hungry classes playing together can be a bit awkward at times, as this character is very hungry for elements. So having other mercenaries that make elements in your party can be useful, but we will be pinching them for ourselves, so that might upset some other people that you're playing with. So ultimately, we should really be trying to be as self-sufficient as we can with our play. The Elementalist has a lot of element generation through their attack modifier deck as well, so perks are actually really important with this character to get our kind of element generation online, and we'll talk about that as we go along through the build. Okay, so this build is going to give you a clear combo path for each rest cycle, so we're going to probably have the same order of play on our cards for each rest cycle. So we have a very strict order in which we want to play cards. We're going to try to avoid actually using the bottom of Shaping Ether. This is a great card for giving you some flexibility in the build, and is also a great way of filling in the void of being able to generate elements potentially. So it does definitely make your life a lot easier, but it also nerfs some of our damage output that we can possibly do. And if we are happy to try and stick to a strict kind of combo, then actually we can kind of achieve the elements that we need, hopefully, without actually having to resort to the bottom of this. We also want to heavily lean actually on using the top of Shaping the Ether anyway. We want to use the stun and the target 2 on Shaping the Ether as much as possible, and maybe if we're lucky, occasionally we can get the +2 attack as well, or maybe the push 3. The +2 attack is obviously a very nice thing to be able to add on, but yeah, we're generally going to be trying to revolve around getting that target 2 stun off as much as we can as well with Shaping the Ether. The most important thing with this build, and just with this character in general, is to be aware of what you want to do, not only on this turn, but also on your next turn and on your following turns. This is a very hungry character for elements, and if you kind of fall out of whack with your elements, where you don't make the element you need for the following turn, or you kind of just end up falling out of sync with your combination of cards, then you're going to have a pretty miserable time. So you definitely need to keep engaged with this character, and this isn't necessarily a very flexible build. We know what we're going to want to do many turns in advance, and we're going to play to that. This can be obviously a very strict way to play, which some people might not enjoy, but it is a very powerful way to play, and that will ensure that we can maximize our damage potential and our sort of efficiencies with the Elementalist. A quick note to Guildmaster players in Digital, or anyone potentially starting this character at level 1 or thinking about starting this character at level 1. This character can be a bit of a slog at low levels and really does need perks, items, enhancements, and a few levels to really shine and sort of smooth out some of the element problems that it might have. If you're playing the campaign and your prosperity is pretty high and you're coming in and you can start at maybe like level 3 or level 4, then that is a good place to start with this character. I think around that kind of level, around level 4, level 5, that's when you sort of really start coming into your own with this character a little bit more. So bear that in mind. Early level problems can be an issue, but they do disappear completely if you're able to get a running start with this character. Because of that, really, this class will not be for everyone, and actually it isn't really one for me personally. I'm not a huge fan of this character, playing it in my games. However, this class is a lot of people's favourite, and there's some good reasons for that. I mean, compared to other classes at level 1, this character is a bit slow out of the blocks, and that might actually end up tarnishing your overall opinion of it early. If you waver from your combos even slightly, then you can actually, end up not being able to execute anything in a long rest turn, in a cycle of a turn. It can become really at odds and can become, quite frustrating to play, really. However, if you actually enjoy the kind of intricate and focused play nature of this character, then you can actually get levels, fairly quickly, and you can get massively rewarded at later levels with some hugely powerful cards with this character. This character does sort of morph into being one of the stronger characters in the game, so yeah. So there's definitely a carrot at the end of the stick, but it can be quite a long stick. If you do have some cash to blow on this character nice and early in Guildmaster, I would recommend it. Also, this class is generally just very good for unlocking the Sun class and all of the enhancement achievements in general. So if you want fast progress in Guildmaster, then you may actually just want to unlock this character, chuck them in your party, and just roll with them from very early on anyway. Okay, I think that's enough of a disclaimer about this character, because this is a difficult character to talk about. It's not one of my favorites. It's not one of the ones that I am the best at either. So let's get into a nice simple build that hopefully everyone can follow and have success playing with the Elementalist. Okay, so let's have a look at the cards we take at level 1 and why we're using them, what our starting cards are. So we have Raw Enhancement, we have Pure Augmentation, we have Formless Power, we have Shaping the Ether, we have Stoking Hail, we have Tremulent Cyclone, Infernal Vortex, Lava Eruption, Ice Spikes, and we have Brilliant Flash. And I will put these all up on the screen like I do in the board game format now, so you can pause the video here if you want to. Just get a nice, easy to view all of the different cards in the board game. So let's kind of go through a few of these cards. So the most important sort of aspect of this is the combo nature of it. Is we're trying to generate an element on a turn to then use it on the following turn, right? And the main way we do this is we actually use these move 2 cards that we have that have these elements on the bottom. So these are going to be the ones that are going to be very important. They're going to be a big role player for us. And because of this, you need to be a bit more conscious about burning these cards through either through the powerful effects or through short rests, long rests, things like that, because you're going to be leaning on these elements quite a lot, especially at level 1. So some of the most sort of powerful things that we can do is we've got sort of Formless Power top here, which is just a very nice attack that can get us an XP. We could potentially just burn any 2 elements here. We could just use any 2 elements to get an attack 4. Very good at level 1. We've got Shaping the Ether, which gives us a stun, Potentially we can empower the attack a little bit here, but really we're looking for the stun and the target 2 here. So if we can get ice and earth element generated together, that would be really, really good for us. We've got ice spikes, which is a very, very simple card to set up. We only need 1 element for this, and it's actually quite a powerful effect. Being able to attack for 2 and getting a wound effect off is very strong, and we should be able to do that fairly easily and reliably using, for example, the bottom of Stoking Hail to be able to make that fire. So what we're going to be trying to do is we're going to be making elements, and we're going to be then using them on the following turns. Okay, we also have Brilliant Flash in here. This is our only kind of non-burn reliable element generation that we have on the top of a card, which makes this card actually very valuable for us, because when we're starting to look at things like Formless Power, you know, we don't actually have any cards that need the light element to begin with. We don't have any at level 1. However, this just gives us that extra element for Formless Power top, so that we can then just sort of use those two and get the full effect out of that card. So Formless Power is very good when combined with Brilliant Flash. So this is definitely a role player for us in the game. We also have 2 kind of fairly simple cards. We have Raw Enhancement and we have Pure Augmentation. Both of these just use different elements for different things, so you'll notice that they're kind of like they're very similar. They're obviously both the same initiative, but they kind of flip the elements and where they are on the cards. So you've got them, you've got wind as a move enhancement on the top of this, but you've actually got it as an attack enhancement on the top of this one. So these actually swap around a little bit. That's just a good way for us to use 1 element per turn to just get some extra damage in and get some XP going. Also helps our movement out a lot, because this character can be quite slow due to the fact that we're generally moving 2 every single time. And you will want to keep that in mind as you're playing. You know, you should be trying to move closer to, you know, the next room if possible as you go. Protect yourself, because you're definitely a ranged character that doesn't want to get hurt. But that is something to consider, that as you're playing this scenario, you want to try and move towards the doors, because you are a little bit slow. You don't have lots and lots of movement. So if you just stay, you know, in your starting spot at the beginning of a scenario, you clear a room, you've got quite a long distance to move. You don't really have any cards at level 1 unless you can, you know, somehow make this work. You're not really going to have a big movement to be able to shoot across the room. So unless you have boots, of course. So keep that in mind. Your movement can be a little bit awkward at times. So just keep an eye on it, and you'll definitely get used to that as you play. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at what an example turn at level 1 might look like. And this is going to be a really important combination of cards that you might want to write down in reference, or just kind of keep in mind that this is kind of like, this is a combo that initially you'll just want to live by, essentially, and you get very used to playing this at level 1. Then you'll have great success playing it. You'll get loads of XP in the process, and this character will actually feel very fun rather than perhaps not, you know, you getting frustrated. On the first turn of the game, we're going to be playing Brilliant Flash, and we're going to go late. So we're going to use this as our leading initiative card for just the heal. Is what we're going to do. Then we're going to use Lava Eruption Bottom. So using Lava Eruption Bottom actually generates us wind, which is an element that we don't care so much about, but we'll get into that in a second. So going late here at 67, 19, perhaps we've managed to heal something, but now we are going into our following turn with 2 elements hopefully in play, both light and wind, you know, if we've done everything properly. So then on turn 2, we'll use Formless Power, because it's not often that we get 2 elements in 1 turn. So we will use the top of Formless Power, and we'll actually use the bottom of Stoking Hail to make fire during the same period, just so that we've got fire for our following turn, because on our following turn, we want to use Ice Spikes as our attack, which is going to give us an attack 2 with wound against hopefully 3 targets. Very good, but again, some more experience points. And then our bottom card that we're going to use for the movement and generation is going to be Infernal Vortex, making us ice. So once we've got that, we can then play the top of Shaping the Ether. This will give us just a very basic attack 1 with stun. Nothing crazy, but at level 1, this is, you know, an absolute fine card to have. The Tinkerer has stun shot and loves it, so we are very happy to just do an attack 1, target 1 with stun. And then the bottom we're going to use is Tremulant Cyclone to make the leaf. That leaves only 2 cards left, so we should at this point in time have played 8 cards. So now it only leaves us with 2 cards left, which is Raw Enhancement and Pure Augmentation, and hopefully with just a leaf element left hanging out. So at this point in time, you basically play whichever one you feel is necessary. So if you need to move because all of the enemies are dead, maybe already, then you can use this one and then just use the move 3 and use the leaf to give yourself an extra move 2, so you can move up to 5. Or if you still need to do some damage, then you just lead with the leaf on this one. You do an attack 3 using that, range 3, and you get yourself an XP. And there you go. That is a extremely simple complete rotation at level 1 from turn 1 using all 10 of your cards that actually uses the elements in a very efficient way. Now, of course, as you kind of go on and you start burning cards through your rests and things like that, then there are other opportunities for you to change the way that you're doing it depending on, you know, what cards you find more valuable. Also, you've got the top of Tremulent Cyclone, which can have some corner case use that you might want to sneak in, but once you've got that core combo down, I would really recommend you just play through that combo pretty much you know, reliably until you are, well, until you get very, very comfortable with that sequence of cards. And as we level up, we'll start swapping in cards that will make that sequence much easier and will give us more sort of variability and flexibility in what we're doing. Okay, so let's move on to level 2. You've got your level 1 combo down nicely. Let's go on to level 2 and let's see what we get. So we have access to Boiling Arc and we have Crystallizing Blast. So both of these cards are very good actually, because they both do something that we need, which is creating an element with a top action that doesn't burn. So both of these cards do that. Boiling Arc is slightly better attack, makes fire, but it is a melee attack, whereas Crystallizing Blast is less so, but it could target more things and it's a ranged attack. So both of these cards are fairly decent and they definitely actually do a lot for us. Now, in terms of what card that we want to take, we're going to be going more for a kind of ranged damage build. So Crystallizing Blast is definitely something that has RI. It also has potential to attack on more things. It's easier to pull off because our movement is quite slow, so actually getting into a position to use Boiling Arc can be difficult because we're only moving 2 every turn. Plus, Crystallizing Blast makes that ice element, which is really, really good with Shaping the Ether, right? We want to be able to consistently do Shaping the Ether in the early turns. So this could actually be very, very good for us and could help us draw loads of cards as well from our attack modifier deck, which is very good once we start getting into perks, which we will touch a little bit on perks as we go because they are very important for this character, but I will cover perks, you know, in full towards the end. They both have a move 4, but to be honest, the text is kind of irrelevant on both of the bottom of these. We don't really care. Say Boiling Arc is an absolutely fine card. However, Crystallizing Blast is just a lot easier for us to use. So we're going to be taking Crystallizing Blast, but it helps us make an element with the top, a repeatable top, which is really, really important here. Similar to why we have Brilliant Flash, this just allows us to make 2 elements in a turn, which is something that we really, really want. Okay, so the card we're going to be getting rid of here is actually Lava Eruption. The wind we get from Lava Eruption bottom is most useful for Tremulent Cyclone top. However, it is our weakest attack, and you know, the bottom of Cyclone makes an element that is actually kind of useful and critical for us when we're trying to use Shaping the Ether to get that target too, which is what we're going to start looking at doing now. So we definitely want the leaf element on this, which then means that we're very rarely going to play the top, which then kind of means, do we really care about wind as much? Probably not. So it becomes definitely the weakest attack and the weakest element to us at this point in time. So the attack on Lava Eruption is kind of underwhelming as well. So just the attack 1. So without any kind of buffs, it's pretty underwhelming. And yeah, with wind not being the most important element to us, this is actually a very simple swap for us. And now we can start to look at making both ice and leaf in a single turn, which then gives us that big stun target 2 with Shaping the Ether on a following turn. Removing and adding cards with this character is very tricky, as just simple swaps based on power level alone could actually really knock you off course. This is not a character we can just jam all of the good stuff in, so we actually need to look at the bigger picture. Now having two repeatable ways to make elements on the top of our cards also means we can start to play Formless Power bottom more consistently to power up our other attacks, right? Because now we may actually have a spare element so that we can actually power up, say for example, ice spikes if we were to have fire plus another element, right? In fact, if you're feeling pretty bold, we can now start to change our combos slightly more, and we can actually on turn 1 use Brilliant Flash and burn Formless Power, which then gives us that element from Brilliant Flash to be able to then go straight into a strong turn 2 using Crystallizing Blast and using Tremulent Cyclone to then do a massive attack, you know, with Crystallizing Blast and powering it up potentially with Formless Power using that light element that we generated. So we're straight away starting to get value from Formless Power bottom and starting to add up damage as we go, and then that leads straight into us being able to use the top of Shaping the Ether to do a stun and a target 2, and then we can start going back onto playing Stoking Hail to then get our ice spikes going as well. The other great reason that Crystallizing Blast is amazing is as we get levels, we're going to start to get perks, and as we start to upgrade our attack modifier deck, we have lots of element generation inherently in our attack modifier cards that we can add. So being able to attack multiple things, you know, essentially we can kind of go on turn 2, we can play Crystallizing Blast, and then we can, you know, see what elements we get, and then perhaps we can tailor what we want to do slightly around what we've got. But as long as you still keep yourself a nice clear path into what your kind of combos are going to be. Obviously at turn 2, you're only going to have 1 perk. Maybe you might have 2 perks because you've managed to do 3 check marks, or perhaps you've managed to do the achievements in Guildmaster mode. So keep that in mind. You know, perks are very important with this character for sure, so try and work towards your perks as much as possible. It is also important to point out that the move 4 on Crystallizing Blast is just a really nice sort of gap fill movement, you know, and that is a huge amount of movement for this character. So we're going to be mainly using it for the attack top, of course, but if you ever find yourself stuck between rooms or you need to move, then using this as a move 4 is actually it's actually pretty decent, and yeah, can help us move around quite a bit. Okay, so let's have a look at level 3. Alright, so we have Burial and we have Chain Lightning, 2 very good cards. These are just, you know, really fun cards to see, you know, at level 3. We have a great pick to make here. So Burial, the top is attack 4, range 4, spend an earth element and spend a night element to get an extra attack each piece, and we can also get the immobilize from the earth and the curse from the night. Very strong attack, being able to attack for 6, potentially 3 things. That's an incredibly strong attack. So yeah, that's a really good top, and yeah, definitely worthy of a burn. But really why we're most interested in this card is actually the bottom effect, which is just attack 3, range 4, and make a night element for us. So this is just, you know, really great for a damage build. Being able to potentially play double attacks, so an attack on the top and an attack on the bottom, is always very strong. The fact that this makes an element as well is obviously just exactly what we're looking for, even though at the moment the only card we actually use the night element for specifically is Burial. It will come into more play later on down the line, so that night element is definitely one we're interested in. You can obviously short rest or use a stamina pot to potentially make the night element with Burial on 1 turn, then use a stamina pot, get it back to then be able to do the top action and use that nighttime burn as well. So there is potential there. It's a little bit harder to do, but yeah, the bottom is just you know, very reliable element generation, and it's attacking things. It's just everything we want to do, really. So Chain Lightning is a really fun and interesting card. It's actually one of the kind of most fun cards I think I've come across in Gloomhaven. It's, yeah, I absolutely love the theme of this card. It does exactly what it says on the card itself. I just really like this card. Problem is with this build is that it doesn't quite work or do enough for this particular build. So in this instance, we will be going with Burial. However, absolutely can't hate on anybody for picking Chain Lightning here. The top is actually very easy for us to achieve with what we have going on currently with Brilliant Flash. We can, you know, easily make that. We have actually got rid of the wind element already, so being able to add that wind isn't really going to happen for us unless we decide to like, you know, change our cards around and bring Lava Eruption back in, which, you know, we don't really want to do in this build. However, it's possible. So Chain Lightning, I absolutely love the top of this. Thematic win, Really strong card, you know, can be very, very good in certain situations. You're also, you know, with Chain Lightning, you're more likely to be able to hit all of the targets because you don't really care about specific patterns, right? Burial has a very specific pattern that you need to get all three. Chain Lightning, not necessarily, so you can definitely make Chain Lightning work in different situations. However, if you're playing at lower player counts, Chain Lightning may start to fall off a little bit because, you know, you might not often be against 4 enemies in a room. You may only be up against, you know, sort of 3 or 2 or 3 and things like that. So the problem that Chain Lightning has for us is that the bottom, you know, which is going to be the main use, right? Because we're not going to be using this burn just solely all the time. We're going to be using this card for the bottom a lot. And the heal 3 range 4, it's an effect we already have access to. We already have a heal. It is on the bottom, which is nice. However, we can't make double light in a turn, right? We can't play Chain Lightning and Brilliant Flash in a turn and make double light to then give us, you know, two elements. We need to be creating unique elements with each of our cards. And Burial gives us access to creating an element that we're not using at all with anything else right now. You know, it's a fresh element into the mix, which helps power up Formless Power as well as just being, you know, strong enough as it is in itself. So we're very simple choice for us here, Burial, but I absolutely love Chain Lightning and I can't hate on anybody for taking it in certain builds or, you know, to have fun. It's a really fun card, so, but we're taking Burial here. So the card that we're actually going to swap out is we're actually going to swap out Raw Enhancement here. Now the reason is that Raw Enhancement, we're generally looking to do as much damage as possible, and Raw Enhancement we were looking to do the attack with the element. We've now kind of dropped our wind, so we don't have lava eruption anymore to make wind, so that's not very likely we'll ever be able to use this for the top, and we want to be trying to do as much damage as possible. So although this is some good movement, we do have move 4 on our crystallizing blast that we now have, so we can quite comfortably drop Raw Enhancement here. We want to keep pure augmentation because this still gives us the kind of leaf and ice combo here that we're actually creating for shaping the ether. But if we ever wanted to pivot, if perhaps, you know, an ally then kills everything and we go, oh, okay, well, now we just need to kill one enemy, we can go all in with pure augmentation to do that. So we keep pure augmentation, we drop Raw Enhancement, and we bring in Burial. So now with Burial, we have another way of kind of creating an extra element. So with Burial, we can then start to hopefully try to power up some of our other attacks, right? To be able to ensure that potentially we can get an extra kind of bit of damage using Formless Power and our AoE attacks like Crystallizing Blast and Ice Spike. So you're going to try and basically filter in Burial before you want to do one of your AoEs, which is at this point in time Ice Spikes and Crystallizing Blast. Okay, let's go on to level 4. Okay, so at level 4 we've got a real doozy. We got Primal Duality and we've got Gravel Vortex. Let's talk about Gravel Vortex slightly to begin with. So the top of Gravel Vortex is attack 2, target all adjacent enemies. It is a melee attack and we can make wind and earth. Now that is an effect that, you know, it's very nice to be able to make 2 elements with an attack. In fact, that is, you know, very, very powerful indeed. However, it is a melee attack, which is just, you know, not really what we want to be doing. It's not very likely we're going to be able to do it. The initiative doesn't let us go super late, so potentially we could, you know, play this very late, you know, move into range, attack, then go early the following turn and move away so that we're not in danger. It's not really kind of possible with this character. So the top of this card's a little bit at odds as to how we're playing, but, you know, for certain builds, maybe they might find it interesting. The bottom of this is loot 1, or we can actually consume 2 elements to just loot 2 instead. And honestly, this bottom side of this card is pretty much garbage. So even if this was like a loot 3, I don't think I would recommend it. That's a heavy investment to be able to just do a loot 2. Loot 1 will get most of the things you want most of the time. As people who follow me will know, I'm not a huge fan of the loot effect. I think that it slows the game down. I think that it is, you know, quite often you can just run around and get the loot yourself. However, this character does absolutely thrive on money. This character loves money. So, you know, there is an argument to be said getting rich with something like this might be worth doing. However, unfortunately for Gravel Vortex, it is opposite Primal Duality, which really should get you very, very excited. Mainly for this bottom here, so you can see it's got to move to create 2 elements. And it's just a fact at this point in time that it creates 2 elements, but these 2 specific elements are very important to us too moving forwards. So move to create light and dark gives us plenty of formless power fodder for the time being. Primal Duality on the top as well has attack 5, range 4, target 2. Make ice, fire, 1 XP. That's just an incredibly strong attack. Being able to attack 2 things for 5, 10 damage. Range 4 as well ensures that you're, probably going to be able to do it. So yeah, that's a great burn effect on the top as well, and 15 initiative to boot. Yeah, this card is pretty nuts. So we absolutely love this card for us. And the good news is that Gravel Vortex is kind of a bit trash for us, so it's not even a hard decision to make. So we just sort of slam dunk Primal Duality here, and we're very, very happy to do so. So now we're at level 4. I think this class does start to turn a little bit of a corner. So now we've got, potential access to Primal Duality. You've got some experience under your belt playing the character. Hopefully you're starting to really kind of find your groove with playing the combos of the different cards to ensure that you can kind of maximize your XP and damage every single sort of rest cycle. Also, we now should have some perks going for us. So level 4, we should have 4 perks and potentially an extra 2, maybe even 3 through the achievement system or through the checkmark system if you're playing the campaign. So we are now starting to find our groove, and we're starting to see some sort of rewards for our sort of studied play, if you like. Now, this isn't a huge power spike for us, not like some other level 4 cards that you may see. It doesn't suddenly transform our character and make us incredibly strong, or at least not quite yet. But it is a great role player and certainly just makes things a lot easier for us, and can basically mean that you can pull off some very easy formless power, combos with your AoEs, just very reliably now. The choice to replace it might seem obvious. You might think, well, let's get rid of Brilliant Flash because this now makes the light element, right, that this makes. However, having this element generation on the top as a relatively free and easy action does mean that we can then play, in combination this with one of our other generators that actually makes an element that we can consume for that element to get the good effects, right? So Brilliant Flash plus the bottom of Stoking Hail, for example, gives us an Ice Spikes, plus we can then use Formless Power to boost this up an additional attack to make it an attack 3. That's not actually possible using Primal Duality. So although Primal Duality gives us 2 elements and it seems great, there is kind of another story unfolding here. It also really hurts our turn 1 play of just playing, Formless Power bottom plus Brilliant Flash top, as just a grand opening for every single scenario that we play, to then just lead into a powered up Crystallizing Blast. Ultimately, I think this decision is going to come down to your party composition and your access to different elements, either through items that you have yourself or through your teammates being able to generate elements for you. Because if your teammates can go early and generate you an element, then there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't even just go straight into Formless Power and straight into Crystallizing Blast as your turn 1 play, if you know you're going to have an element kicking around from your teammate. You could also just consider dropping Pure Augmentation because it's the weakest of our attacks. It's not often that we actually get to use anything other than, attack 3 with this card. So it's, pretty underwhelming really compared to other things. So you could swap out Pure Augmentation for Primal Duality here. You could swap out Brilliant Flash for Primal Duality here. I think you're going to have to make that decision yourself. However, I think either of those 2 cards are fair to swap out. I also think it's absolutely fair to just sideboard this card for later. Now, if you're playing actually in Gloomhaven Digital and you're playing Guildmaster mode, then sideboarding cards doesn't really make too much sense, considering that we can just reset our mercenary whenever we like. So you could consider actually going back and taking something like Boiling Arc instead. If you wanted a usable card, take Boiling Arc and actually just use it as the move 4, and then and swap out, for example, Pure Augmentation. Just use this as a move 4 because this card probably isn't doing too much for you. Or of course you can just use it for a little cheeky attack as well. So you've got other options in Guildmaster because you've got the reset mercenary here and you've got no penalty for doing so. However, I'm going to take it from the basis that I'm playing a party, I'm playing this honest, I'm playing this from level 1 to level 9. I can't go back and you know, change my card choices as we go. So for me, I am going to swap out Brilliant Flash for Primal Duality, and this is purely on the basis that my Mind Thief is going to be able to make me an element on turn 1, which isn't too much of a stretch. You know, using Perverse Edge, for example, as a stun on early initiative. That's something that the Mind Thief does a lot. So I'm pretty sure that I can actually just drop Formless Power and Crystallizing Blast as my sort of turn 1 play. If, of course, you find that the wheels are starting to come off at this point in time, you find that after making this change, you are struggling a little bit because you are really benefiting from just having that extra element with Brilliant Flash on the top, then honestly, just drop Primal Duality and just leave Primal Duality in your sideboard for later use. Okay, on to level 5. Okay, so at level 5 we have Obsidian Shards and we have Winter's Edge. Obsidian Shards, attack 2, range 3, target 2. We can consume Earth and Fire to get an additional +3 attack. Very, very strong attack. Being able to attack 2 targets for 5, 10 damage total. Yes, please. You know, if you can reliably do this, this is great, considering that the top of Primal Duality does, you know, pretty much the same thing, but it's a burn, and this is, you know, repeatable. Really, really, really strong. The bottom is Shield 1 Self. Not something we really care about because we shouldn't really be putting ourselves in harm's way with this build. And we can make Ice and Night Element, which is, again, you know, that's just good, cheap, easy generation to get, though, although it isn't tied to a move or anything like that, but it's cheap and easy element generation. The other card we have is Winter's Edge, which is attack 5, range 2. That's just flat, no elements required. And then if we spend air and ice, we can actually get an additional +2 range 4 now, and Pierce 4. This is a good one. So this card helps you deal with loads of like enemies that are just really difficult for this character to deal with up to now. So things like imps, living spirits, flame demons, anything with high shield, low health, living spirits, it just cuts through them in a really, really efficient way. And the good thing is as well is it's just a base attack 5, you know, in any other situation, or if things sort of don't go to plan for you. This is just a great card where, let's say you're having a bit of a rough time and you're in a particular scenario where, you know, perhaps the enemies are consuming elements, which is really starting to, like, you know, screw up your plan. At least you have, you know, Winter's Edge giving you the ability to be able to just do a good attack at range, you know, not a great amount of range, but, you know, it's at range. To be able to actually do something rather than, you know, rely on your elements every time. Incredibly strong, and those 2 elements to be able to get you the pierce is you know, it is much better than maybe it looks on the surface. Just trust me, when you get against certain enemies, they will absolutely melt with the top of Winter's Edge. The bottom is heal 2, range 2, and, you know, make 2 elements. So some more free element generation here. I like this a lot more than the shield that we get with Obsidian Shards, because the shield really does do absolutely nothing whatsoever. It doesn't do anything at all. Whereas heal 2 at least, you know, could remove poison, remove wound, you know, give us a little bit of incremental value as we push through the dungeon. So yeah, this heal is, you know, yes, it's a tiny heal, it's a very small heal for this level, but it's very useful, and we get 2 elements as well off the back of it. So I think on balance here, unless you had Boiling Arc in your deck, then I think that it's very difficult for you to reliably always activate the top of Obsidian Shards. And yeah, most of the time it will probably stay in your hand, being a very sad, you know, attack 2, range 3, target 2, which is not really where you want to be. And the bottom is, yeah, it's good, but the shield just doesn't do anything. And we have quite a bit of ice generation already. We have quite a bit of night generation already. We did lose that light generation, with Brilliant Flash. We swapped in Primal Duality instead. And also, can't be understated that Winter's Edge is just a one sort of turn enabler for Ice Spikes plus Formless Power. So it does power up Ice Spikes, and it gives us that extra element to use with the bottom of Formless Power if we've already played that. So it's got a very good combo with this card. So we are definitely taking Winter's Edge here. So the astute of you viewers out there might have noticed that we just took a card that uses an element that we no longer make. So that wind element, we actually got rid of Lava Eruption at level 1, which was the card that made wind for us and was the kind of reliable wind generation that we had at our disposal. We don't actually have that anymore, so we can't actually play the top of Winter's Edge, unless we've managed to get some perks going. So it's very important here that we actually make a few other changes. So we're not only just bringing in Winter's Edge and we're losing a card, but we're actually going to be bringing in Lava Eruption too. So we're actually going to be getting rid of Pure Augmentation. This was a card that was already on the fringe of being cut because it's quite underwhelming. It's really just an attack 3 for us most of the time. So we're going to get rid of that. And we're actually going to get rid of Infernal Vortex as well, because we have ice generation through our Crystallizing Blast. And to be honest, we can start flipping more cards to get ice as well. And the only kind of ice element top that we really, really care about is Shaping the Ether. So we're not playing Stoking Hail for the ice on the top. That's very rare that you'd want to do that, because Shaping the Ether is just strictly better. So we should really be aiming to using Stoking Hail bottom for making fire and Shaping the Ether top for using the stun, hopefully with the target too as well. This is quite a simple swap. We're going to swap this out as well, and we're going to get Lava Eruption, and we've got Winter's Edge. So now we've got nice and easy access to that wind element if we need it. Okay, on to level 6. Okay, so we've got Eye of the Hurricane and we've got Simulacrum. I think that's how you pronounce it. I can never be quite too sure. So let's talk about Eye of the Hurricane first. So it's a heal 3, range 4, attack 2, target all enemies within range 2 of the healed figure. So this is, more of a supporty card, but it does have some attack upside. It makes 2 elements, which is really nice. The 2 elements we need for Winter's Edge as well, which is convenient. But the attack 2 is kind of on the low end, and it's only all enemies within range 2, and would, also need you to have some kind of tank ally that's in the middle of the mix of enemies as well. So I think the top of this for a burn effect, it's not a bad burn effect by any means. I think it's, in terms of burn effects, it's pretty good, I think. However, it doesn't really fit into what we're doing. We're trying to do lots of attacks. And also, we don't like to have too many burn cards that are attacks. We want every card in our hand to be fueling us with reliable elements and spending those elements reliably. So this is kind of like, a burn to get one, decent effect maybe, and 2 elements. It's not really worth it. The bottom move 3, and then we can boost it up with fire to get +3 move, or wind or air to get an additional jump. Not really that great. Again, we're going to be using that fire really to be, making ice spikes better. So it's not often that we find ourselves with the fires, which then means that it's just jump that we might be able to get from it. And, do we really need jump? I mean, we could also just enhance jump onto something if we really wanted jump. So, I just think this card is generally a bit overwhelming for us in this build. It doesn't really fit into our combo or our use of elements. Now, Simulacrum is a card that we are very excited to see, because this kind of brings the whole Primal Duality card kind of round into the fold now. So Primal Duality has been a little bit awkward up to this point. It may even still be in your sideboard at this point in time. However, now is definitely the time to bring Primal Duality in, because Simulacrum, we can actually, do a lot of work with this card for sure. So the idea with this is it's an attack 2, range 3, and then you can do any number of these. So you can do, with 4 elements, you can activate 2 of these. With 6, you could activate all of the top of this card. But essentially we can add an extra +3 attack, we can add a target 2, and we can immobilize and muddle. Now, ideally, we're going to be looking to hopefully do the +3 attack and hopefully the target 2. I mean, that's really where you want to live with this card. Then it becomes, you know, an attack 5, target 2. And if we can actually get ourselves to, you know, 5 elements, then instead of 6, we can then use Formless Power to boost that up as well, and actually do an attack of 6. So sort of like what Obsidian Shards is doing, right? Except we are kind of doing it, we have to generate more elements in order to get the target 2, but it's not too far away, and it doesn't really care what elements we have, which is important because the idea with this card is that we're going to want to play this after we've probably played Crystallizing Blast. You know, you're at level 6 now. Perks, you should have quite a few perks. We'll get into the specifics of the perks in a bit, but you have lots of ways of generating elements with your perks, and you should have been taking them up to this point. I'll get into the strict order of perks. It's quite hard to kind of not talk about perks as we go, but essentially, you know, after you kind of get your first 2 perks of removing your -1s, from your 3rd perk onwards, you're going to be getting the ones that make you elements. So the idea here is that we're going to be flipping a lot of cards with Crystallizing Blast. We're going to be playing probably Primal Duality. So let's say we play Primal Duality and Crystallizing Blast. That is 3 elements right off the bat. On the next turn, we could then consider playing Simulacrum, which we've then got 3 elements, and hopefully, because we played Crystallizing Blast and we attacked, let's say, 4 or 5 targets, we've managed to flip another element along the way as well, getting us to 4 and maybe even 5, right? So it's not within the realms of possibility to consistently be playing this, you know, with 4 elements. That's pretty reasonable, I think. So yeah, really exciting card to play with, and definitely one that we want for our combo, and Primal Duality just suddenly got a lot better for us. We should really talk a little bit about the bottom of this card. Ignore it. Just ignore the bottom of this card, please. It's not for this build. It's sort of for like a melee build, you could argue, but with 10 health, I don't think this thing will stay around for long enough. You could obviously just tank with it as well, like there is the option for that. But to be honest, you're never really going to find yourself playing the bottom of this unless you're in some sort of spawning scenario where you need to stay alive for so many turns, and dropping this down might absorb a few attacks from some enemies. So just ignore the bottom of this for sure. The card we're going to be getting rid of for this is going to be Stoking Hail, which is a little bit awkward because we've been relying on Stoking Hail to ensure our ice spikes can work. But I think on balance, you're probably going to end up finding that, you know, you can use Winter's Edge to do that, or hopefully we're getting the flips from Crystallizing Blast. We are now starting to enter the period where your choices for which cards to lose are going to be heavily driven by your party composition and by the items, you know, that you've managed to accumulate. Because you may find that actually, no, I actually struggle with fire, but I can get leaf whenever I like it. There is definitely a little bit of work you need to put in yourself here. I can't hold your hand on all of these decisions because they are going to be, you know, party specific. In this particular instance, we're actually going to get rid of this because, you know, the top is never used, the bottom is just make fire, and we do have a way to make it with Winter's Edge if we want to do that as well. So I feel like we can either get the flips that we need, or we can generate it through Winter's Edge if we really need to. So Stoking Hail is going to go, and we're going to bring in Simulacrum instead. Okay, so let's go up to level 7. Oh, level 7. So here we go. So at level 7, we get, I mean, access to possibly one of the most busted cards in Gloomhaven. Why this isn't a level 9 card, I do not know, but this card is what you've been waiting for, really, and what all of the kind of setup and the hard work and the tears in learning your combos and playing this character has been building towards, and it's this card here, Vengeance. So Vengeance is just incredibly strong. So we've got an attack 2, range 3, potential AoE, nothing to write home about there, right? But this is what we really care about. So we can spend Night and any other element at all to kill all normal targets instead in that hex. So potentially this could be an execute 3, and it's repeatable. This is not a burn. Primal Duality creates 2 elements, one of them being night. So this is just a very simple way for you to get those elements whenever you need them, extremely easily. This card is just bonkers good. It is so good. It's pretty busted. There's pretty much no reason why you wouldn't take Vengeance, but let's have a look at the other card. So we've got Pragmatic Reinforcement, which is a heal 3, range 3. We've got shield, we've got heal 2 potentially, and we've got a recover one of our discarded cards. This is actually like a pretty nice effect. You know, if you could get all 3 of these together, you know, I think it's pretty decent. I mean, the shield one is probably, I mean, unless you're doing it on an ally, I guess, but even then I don't think it's that great. But being able to heal for 5 and recover a card, not bad. You know, heal 5 is a good amount of heal, definitely. And the bottom is an attack 3, range 3, and we've got some other options here. We can add night, get an extra +2 attack, fire to add poison and wound, which is, you know, a very, you know, nice effect to have access to. And we can increase the range, probably less likely. So yeah, this card is not a bad card by any means. It's definitely got some versatility and some use. I think it's a bit shoot the moon to expect that you're going to be able to reliably, you know, get 3 of these elements. That's probably a bit out of the realms of possibility, unless you have lots of items backing you up. But it's just a shame that it's opposite Vengeance, which is just unbelievable. Being able to kill 1, 2, 3 enemies per rest cycle, or use stamina potions to be able to recur this combo. You could, you know, with a major stamina potion, you could get back both Primal Duality and Vengeance. Just, yeah. I mean, this does lead to some very cheesy, scummy play, and the game will become significantly easier for you from this point onwards with Vengeance. But it's just too powerful not to take. Could have been a level 9 card. It's not, but we're going to take Vengeance here. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just absolutely nuts. The only downside and weakness of this card is it's not very good against elites or bosses, because otherwise it's just an attack 2, range 3. The bottom move 3, retaliate, effect of one adjacent ally is you know, pretty crap, to be honest. I mean, the move 3 is okay. Being able to maybe use the light and another element to give, you know, 3 retaliate to an ally at least does something in boss fights. You know, to the point where even if I was going into a boss fight, I think I would always still bring Vengeance just because it could kill the minions. And even though it doesn't directly affect the boss, you know, it kills all of the minions, which just buys you a lot more time to just, you know, wail on the boss. So yeah, just Vengeance. So we are faced with a difficult decision really on what card to get rid of for Vengeance. It's not a clear-cut one again. Like I said, from this point onwards, you're going to be, you know, probably trimming these a little bit to your, you know, to your party specifically. You must keep an eye on what elements that you are generating, which elements you are using. You know, make sure that you don't accidentally cut, you know, the generation card for, you know, that powers one of your other cards. Make sure that, you know, almost group your cards up if it makes it useful for you to be able to see, you know, that card powers this card powers that card. So you kind of get a rough understanding of what it is you're going to do. So we have kind of a couple of cards here that are on the chopping block for us. We have Tremulent Cyclone, which, you know, is mainly being used as a move 2 to give us the leaf, which then kind of gives us this target 2 on Shaping the Ether, which is really where we want to be. At this sort of stage, just having an attack 1 with a stun, a range 3, I think we can do better with this character. And certainly Vengeance allows us to, you know, delete characters from the game, delete enemies from the game, so we don't necessarily maybe need to run as many stuns. So we can start to see like maybe what we would do. Personally here, I'm actually going to drop Shaping the Ether because I feel like dropping Tremulent Cyclone kind of nerfs Shaping the Ether enough anyway, and having just that move to make an element to give us just some more fodder for Formless Power, I think is just worth it really. So I'm going to be dropping Shaping the Ether here. We are very sad to see, you know, this has been one of our main kind of combo pieces right from level 1. We're going to see it go, but, you know, it's either cutting this or it's cutting this, and I feel like having just a card that is just attack 1, range 3, stun 1 is useful. But I think we want to sort of, you know, make the switch onto damage now. And realistically, I mean, once you have vengeance, the game, the whole game becomes warped around vengeance once you get vengeance. So I think we're happy to drop shaping ether here, and we'll pick up vengeance. Okay, not that we need it, but now we're on to level 8 because we are already as overpowered as we really needed to be. But level 8. Okay, so at level 8 in Gloomhaven Digital, we actually only have one card available to us at the moment because the other card hasn't made it into the game quite yet. But I will talk about both cards because for posterity's sake and for this guide to live on the internet, it's important that we talk about all of our options. So we have Elemental Aegis, we'll talk about that first, and that is Shield to Self, and then we can consume 4 elements to give ourselves an additional 4 shield. If this card doesn't kind of give you an indication about what an alternative build that might be available for this character is, I don't know what will, but yeah. Here's to say this is not an effect that we are looking for ourselves, but it's a pretty crazy effect nonetheless. 14 initiative as well, which is what you want to see on a shielding card, right? And we have heal 5 self on the bottom, which is just a really nice heal, and it makes a light element. Elemental Aegis, not a card for us. Definitely a card for a very tanky build, but not what we're doing today, so not one for us. The other card I will put up on screen now is called Volatile Consumption, and that says that once per action, if we consume an element during the action, we may cause one enemy within range 2 to suffer 1 damage, or we may perform a heal 1 range 2 action, 2 XP, you know, persistent ability, and it's a burn. So this is kind of underwhelming really, because it's adding value to what we're doing because we are consuming elements, so it's almost like just sort of giving us an added benefit to everything that we're doing. We're consuming elements every turn, you know, so being able to do extra damage is obviously good, but it is a burn and it does take up a slot, you know, in our hand, which is reserved for creating elements, you know. So if we were to bring this in, we're having to get rid of a card that either does damage outright itself or is creating elements, which is what this card needs in order to be good. So I find this card to be in a little bit of a weird spot. I guess if you had elements running rampant, like absolutely rampant, and you weren't struggling at all with your generation because your other mercenaries were doing it, or you had loads of items that just supported you in order to be able to do this, then yeah, maybe it could be a consideration. But I think it's a little bit win more. You know, it's kind of like one of those cards where, you know, you're already doing a very, very strong job with vengeance. Do you really need another card to allow you to do that? That's gonna, and a burn card as well at that takes your total hand size down and sort of messes with your combos and your efficiencies. I'm not so sure. And the bottom of that card also says move 3 with jump. That's actually quite nice. You know, we don't have jump on any of our other cards unless we've enhanced it, so jump can be a very useful thing to have. And we can spend fire and any other element to get a +2 move, and we can wound all enemies moved through. It's a very nice effect. Or we can spend ice and any other element to get +2 move, and we can immobilize all enemies moved through. And importantly, similarly to Simulacrum, we can actually you know, do both of these. So if we had 4 elements, we could actually, you know, move a total of 7, and we would get the wound and the immobilize. So yeah, pretty good. I mean, immobilize is, you know, one of the weaker control conditions that we can apply because it's only really good against melee enemies. However, it is still a control condition, so that's worth sort of talking about. I think really you're excited about the wound on this more than anything else. But it is a lot of elements to sink into a card, and like we say, we have Simulacrum, and this card really is, you know, the card where we're sinking all of our elements into after we've played Crystallizing Blast and hopefully drawn, you know, a bunch of cards. I don't think either of these 2 cards are particularly great. So at this point in time, I'm actually going to go back in this instance. I'm actually going to go back and pick up Boiling Arc. The reason for this is that it's got a move 4 on the bottom, which is, you know, efficient for us. You know, extra movement is always good. It's a level 2 card, so it's cheap to enhance as well. So if we wanted to, we could do a move 4 and we could put an element on the bottom of there, which I think we will do, to be able to to keep our elements flowing. And also the top is an attack that generates an element as well. So if we find ourselves in an awkward spot, you know, it's another way that we can make fire potentially, which is, yeah, can be very useful for ice spikes. So I think that going back for Boiling Arc here is absolutely fine. And that's actually what we're going to do. Seems weird that we're at level 8 and we're going back to a level 2 card, but this is just like a role player type card. And I think we're very happy to have another move 4, and it will, yeah, it will just help us sort of position ourselves much better. So the card that we're going to get rid of here is we're going to get rid of Tremulent Cyclone. You know, it's we're going to basically be upgrading this move 2 to a move 4, and this move 4 we can then enhance with an element of our choice. Now we are losing the earth element. We don't really have a use for the earth element now though. I mean, the only real use is Burial Top, and you know, to be honest, we're not really doing that in a hurry. So you can always use items, minor mana potions, things like that to be able to get the earth element as and when you need it. So I would actually advise you, obviously if you can afford it, getting any element of your choice. That would be, you know, ideal. But I think getting wind here would also be absolutely fine. Of course, in Guildmaster mode you can actually refund your enhancements, so you could just enhance it with, you know, leaf if you wanted to now, and then actually change it over to wind later or whatever at a later date. So anyway, that's our swap for now. Okay, so on to level 9. So at level 9 we get access to another card which is pretty good. Spoiler alert, it's not this one. The card that we're looking for here is Eternal Equilibrium. Another amazing card, and this is definitely power level worthy of level 9. I do think that potentially Vengeance might be a bit, well, it is a bit better than Eternal Equilibrium, so a bit ironic that these are not swapped, but Eternal Equilibrium is a fantastic card and we're really excited to see it. So Eternal Equilibrium says attack 2, target all enemies within range 3. We can spend Night element to get an extra +1 attack and curse. And we can spend a Light element to get +1 attack and model. So this can be attack 2, 3, 4. And if we use Formless Power, which, you know, is not within the, you know, that's not too crazy to think about having an extra element kicking around as well because of the amount of cards, element generation that we can create. You know, we're going to be potentially attacking, you know, enemies for 5, cursing them, which is just fantastic, and then, you know, the muddle effect, ensuring that those curses get drawn, hopefully, you know, very soon. So yeah, just an incredibly strong attack. You have an enhancement slot here, so, you know, you could, with lots and lots of money, you can go to town, you can add things like Disarm onto this, you know, just purely very silly broken things can be done with enhancements in general. But, you know, in this card, anything that can target multiple things or says just target all enemies within a range can be usually abused. So yeah, love Eternal Equilibrium. I think it's absolutely great. The bottom is heal 4, range 4. Level 1 heal would be heal 3, range 3. A level 9 heal probably would be a bit better than this, maybe. However, you know, we're playing this for the top mainly, and having just another heal that we can use between rooms to just support our team or ourselves as we go forward, it's just useful to have. We don't care at all about the other elements on this card. Ignore them. Don't think you ever want to do that again, unless you are in a spawning, you know, style mission. So we should really go a little bit back over Ethereal Manifestation, although it is definitely not the card that we take. So the top is Summon a Mana Sphere, which is a summon, 3 health, 2 attack, and it makes an element. It has movement of 3 and range of 3, which are 2 very good stats. That does mean that this thing's going to be able to follow you around the dungeon, you know, pretty reliably, and it's going to have range of enemies fairly reliably. So that's good. And the fact that it makes an element for us at the beginning of the round of our turn, right? Because our summon always acts before us, means that we're going to be able to create the element that we want and always kind of plan around that. It's like a free element for us, you know, every single round. However, the problem that this guy has is that it's the only 3 health. This at level 9 is 1 attack away from being dead, and that's not great to have a summon that you've played out at level 9, and, you know, some kind of crazy situation, you know, comes up, either with, you know, night demons going really early, you being caught out of position, all of these different things, you know, trap placements, you know, and things like that. Just weird and wonderful things that can happen in a game of Gloomhaven can often mean that summons just end up being focused, you know. Target 2s, for example, you know, Living Bones having multiple targets on their attacks and just, you know, attacking these things. It's too hard to keep this safe, in my opinion, at level 9, so it's just going to end up dying. You'll make it some value out of it for, you know, a room, maybe even 2 rooms worth. But I just don't think the investment of not only a card choice but also a burn card in your deck is really worth it. And the bottom is perform any of the following abilities: attack 3, range 3, we can move 3, loot 1, heal 3, range 3, blah. Thematically, I like what is going on here. I like having it like this kind of toolbox type effect. You know, it seems like it's very cool because you're like, okay, well, I could really do with doing this, and then I can do that, you know, like, oh, I really need to move this turn, and oh, actually I could also loot, and oh, I could do with giving somebody a heal this turn. In theory, sounds great. In principle, not going to happen, because we are generating our elements for very specific purposes. We're not generating our elements to, oh, now I need to give you a heal. You know, this character is not a versatile character in the sense that you are playing 2 cards and just, you know, oh, maybe I'll play the top, maybe I'll play the bottom. Absolutely not. This character does not do that. And I hope by this point in time you've come to that understanding of playing the character. This is not what they do. So unfortunately, this is really quite an underwhelming level 9 card, I think. I think it's an interesting idea. It would have been nice to have maybe seen this at a lower level, because maybe then we could have used it for something else. I felt like maybe we could have, you know, instead of going back for Boiling Arc, we could have maybe considered this, but certainly between this and Eternal Equilibrium, hands down, there's a clear winner here, and it's Eternal Equilibrium. So as I alluded to before, the card we're going to be dropping here is Lava Eruption, and we're going to be bringing in the Eternal Equilibrium. I haven't done it on this, but essentially what we would be trying to do here is making sure that we're upgrading Boiling Arc bottom with the wind element, so that we still have access to Winter's Edge, because we may not get it, or we have to rely on our draws from our attack modifier, which is not really what you want to be doing. You don't want to rely on the attack modifier draws, you just want them to be able to add that extra little bit, you know. And certainly the ones that you draw through the attack modifier cards are much more useful on something like Simulacrum, because you don't care what they are, right? You know, you don't want to be digging for a very specific element for a very specific use. So yeah, very, very simple choice there. And there we have our sort of finished full level 9 Elementalist build. Okay, so I will put up on screen now all of the board game cards like I usually do, so you can just take a look at the cards in the board game format. Take a look at them. You can pause the video here if you need some time, but as you can see, we've kind of evolved from what we were initially, but we are still a very combo heavy character. We're generating elements on one turn to use them on the following turn. We need to always have this in mind, keeping in sequence, because we can still fall out of sequence. Even at level 9, you just don't have the ability to just, you know, slack with your playing of cards. You definitely still need to have an eye on what it is that you're playing, because you really need to maximize the use of these elements like you have been doing all the way up to this point in order to do things. And to be honest, once you get to level 7 and you unlock Vengeance, this character, you know, warps the game around it, becomes very, very simple to play. The effects of just immediately executing, you know, 2 enemies, maybe even 3, the fact that you can enhance this to actually add a 4th hex, not that I think you're ever going to actually get 4 things, but I think you can at least make getting 3 a lot easier, right? That helps you to get 2 or 3 even easier. It just completely warps the game. And once you do that, you walk into a room, you delete half of that room very simply, then the rest of the dungeon becomes a cakewalk, really. So yeah, this character is slow to ramp up, but man, when it gets going and you get a level 9 Elementalist, it is insane, the damage, and I mean how simple this character makes the game to play. Okay, so let's talk about perks, because we've talked a little bit about perks, and perks are a really important thing to think about with this character. Okay, so For perks, the first 2 perks you're going to get are going to be the same ones you get with every character. You're going to want to get consistency. So definitely get rid of your -1s here. The fact that you can get rid of 4 -1s makes us even better. Super good. You know, we've now made our deck pretty efficient. We've only got 1 -1, -2, and a miss. So very, very nice. However, this is when we kind of pivot, and this is when we get into our very specific cards that we want for this build, and that's going to be down to Magma. So we take Magma here over Blizzard because we can kind of reliably make ice, and wind is not an element that we particularly care about in the first, you know, in the early levels at least. So the first perk that we take after we remove our 4 -1s by doing this twice is we're then going to go over to Magma, and we're going to take that. Next up, we can then go down and take Blizzard. The good thing about this is that because we're actually removing the zeros here, you know, this is not increasing our deck size at this point in time. It is keeping our deck size exactly the same, which is what you want. We want to be able to draw lots and lots of cards, get lots and lots of elements. Okay, so once we've done that, we can then start to add the +0s in. We use fire for ice spikes more than anything else, so having extra fire is going to be great for just doing ice spikes or powering up our other attacks, for example, allowing us to potentially, instead of having to play Stoking Hail bottom, we can actually then do something different. So Conflagrate, get these. I think that's very, very strong. Then we can start to look to do adding the ice element for us, or the wind element. I think on balance here, I think I would actually go with wind first off, because like I said, we actually removed a lot of wind, and again, this is an element that we don't generate ourselves. So because we don't generate it ourselves, it could be a fresh element, which is really good, right? If we make, like, you know, fire 3 times in a turn, right, we still only make fire, whereas, you know, and we maybe spend that on ice spikes, right? Whereas, you know, if we make fire and we make wind, then we've got the wind to spend on formless power. So we should be trying to add the cards that we don't actually make so readily, because they're actually going to be used as just the additional +1 for our next attack with formless power. So we'll get Storm here. So we could, at this point in time, go and take, you know, Quake, because we don't actually have too much access to the earth element, so this could be a decent thing. You could also go back and take Focus potentially as well to remove this last -1, give yourself a +1. I'm kind of okay with it. I don't think you want to go for Glaciate with this particular build, because the fact that we are using Crystallizing Blast means that, you know, we have 1 guaranteed ice generation, and also we have already up to this already, so I just don't think that that we need 3 of these at this point in time. I'm pretty happy to just say let's use Focus here just to get rid of this -1. We definitely want to take it at some point. Then, you know, it's pretty close between this one and this one, I think, and then we'll just take Quake. At this point, you should be, you know, pretty much sorted with your elements. You should have all of your kind of elements sorted. There's definitely no real benefit with this build into adding this, like I said before, so we won't be doing that. So we can now start to look at some of these other effects that we might have access to. Stun is a very good effect to just randomly draw, so I'm absolutely a fan of that. So I think we can look to maybe take Stun here, so we'll take that. Wound is also a really nice effect to add a +1. We do also have, you know, Heighten here where we can replace this. I do think that I would rather have the Wound over this. That's pretty fair. So let's take Lacerate. Now I think is a good time for us to do Heighten, and we can do that twice, and that pretty much tops you out for what you can probably reasonably expect to actually get through like a playthrough. You're probably going to get to around about this level, right? How many perks have we spent? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's probably about right. That's 1 per level and maybe 3 through the checkboxes. If you do need to do any more, then you know, Glaciate is a fine one to pick up again, just more elements, right? And as you level up, certainly Crystallizing Blast, you know, you're not going to be using it as regularly. So like, for example, for Simulacrum, you might not set that up with Crystallizing Blast every single time. So this can be quite good. Certainly this isn't very good. We are actually missing a perk on digital here. We're missing the Add a Target perk. Add a Target's not great for this character because you don't actually have too much like single target. You have a little bit of single target, but it's not, you know, you're trying to draw the single target at the right time at the right thing. It's a bit awkward. So I mean, I'd be happy to, if you had one more, like spend it on Glaciate, and yeah, that probably will roundabout sum up where you are, and then you can kind of pick and choose the other things as you want. Okay, let's have a look at items for this character. So there are a few items that you can use. Let's start off with kind of head items that this character would be interested in. There are a lot of items that are kind of spoiler type items that this character might like. So, I mean, you'll be able to get whether or not an item is great for the Elementalist as you play. You want items that give you elements, you know, that's a given, right? So just keep that in mind. There's not, you know, we'll go over some items here, but you can definitely be a bit adventurous with this and figure out. Things that give you range are obviously very good for, you've got quite a lot of ranged attacks, so pretty happy with getting something like Hawk Helm. You don't actually want something like Eagle Eye Goggles because your deck is very flat compared to other characters, so advantage doesn't really do a lot for you on this character because really your advantage will be during a +0 fire versus a +0 wind, so it doesn't really do too much. So getting an item that extends your range, or getting something like Empowering Talisman to get back your stamina potions, can be very, very strong. But yeah, for the purposes of this, let's just say we're going to go for Hawk Helm. Now, Robes of Evocation is a really, really spicy item to get on this character, and in Guildmaster mode you can get it early. However, in playing the campaign or tabletop, that might take you a while to get it. So Robes of Evocation is a incredibly strong item. It essentially acts like a formless power that you can use once per cycle. So imagine using this along with your Eternal Equilibrium, right? Just, you can see that this character can get very, very crazy very, very quickly. At level 1 though, you're not going to have access to this at all. So at level 1, I think you are, you know, you're probably a Cloak of Invisibility user, to be honest. That's probably where you're going to be with this character. Cloak of Invisibility is just, yeah, absolutely fine. Sacrificial Robes is another one which I don't mind. It's kind of like easier in the start of the game to use compared to Robes, because Robes becomes much better once you Robes of Evocation becomes much better once you obviously have loads and loads of elements generating all the time, whereas Sacrificial Robes, you don't need that extra element. But you do have to spend the 3 life. You have heals to compensate for it, so not too bad. But yeah, Robes of Evocation is the ideal item. However, yeah, Cloak of Invisibility at level 1, I think. So hand items. So you got a couple different here. So in a ideal world, I think you would absolutely love to have a Staff of Eminence. This is a bit greedy. I will say that these items are all very greedy, and you may not find yourself being able to do this. So being able to again just do another, you know, cheeky formless power essentially with this staff is amazing. However, early game, absolutely do not want this. I think early game you're actually going to be looking for the wands, so I would recommend that you get wands as well, because this is a 2-slot item. This is also a 2-slot item, so Staff of Elements is also something that you could consider, but this creates any element. It's 2 slots. You could actually just have 2 different wands instead. I mean, it's going to cost you 10 more. However, I think it's much more beneficial for you to have 2 wands that create specific elements that you want to use, rather than you just having, you know, one big item that fills that slot. Keep your eye out for wands for sure. Onto the leg item, you just want some boots. You know, any kind of boots that you can get your hand on that gives you plus movement, that's all you want on this character. You don't need really anything more. For small items, you know, it shouldn't shock you that mana potions are incredibly strong on this character. Also, mana potions in general are just very good for your allies as well. So if you can convince your allies to be running mana potions for you, that's going to be a big help. So definitely recommend those. Power potions are very strong with this character too, because you're going to be doing big attacks, especially with Eternal Equilibrium at level 9. But just any kind of AoE attack, right, is always going to have the benefit of a major power potion. Stamina potions allow you to recur some of your most broken combos. So being able to get back Vengeance, being able to get back Primal Duality as well. So if you had a major stamina potion, I don't think I have one on this character yet, but major stamina potion, being able to get 2 cards back is very good. If you're playing in the board game, obviously there hasn't been this nerf yet, so there is a nerf, to stamina potions in digital, where it is only recover 1 card, which is generally considered nowadays to be the updated ruling for stamina potions, is that minor gives you 1, major gives you 2. So yeah, minor is not quite as good in digital as it is with the elementalist in physical Gloomhaven, but yeah, definitely you want your stamina potions too. And of course any items that allow you to reoccur that, so Star Earring is very strong. Being able to get your boots back, being able to get your wands back, being able to get your cards back, being able to do a heal. I mean, this item has a lot of synergy with this character, because we will be spending a lot of our items, and we have a lot of tap items that we can get back, and being able to use them multiple times between rests is very good. Okay, so let's take a look at possible enhancements for us. So enhancements kind of goes without saying that just enhancing some of our bottom moves with additional elements can be very strong. We spoke a little bit already about Boiling Arc, which is one we were going to get at a later time. It's 125 gold. That is a lot of gold, but maybe not so much gold when you're playing Guildmaster mode, but I definitely recommend that. So we'll be getting that on this character for this one. Being able to stick anything you like really on the top of Crystallizing Blast. So sticking Curse for 175 seems like a lot of gold. However, man, this is pretty good. Being able to stick Curse on this, we all know what the crack heart is possible with theirs. I mean, this is basically like Dirt Tornado, but for the Elementalists. So you can create your own Curse Nado or Wound Nado. Like I am a big fan of Wound as an effect. We do actually already have Wound with Ice Spikes though, so probably in this instance I would lean towards Poison or Curse. Between the two, probably Curse is better than Poison. So yeah, you mean you can make your own personal choice here. We do a lot of cursing, with Eternal Equilibrium at level 9. So once you're at level 9, I don't think you necessarily need Curse on Crystallizing Blast. Maybe Poison would be better. So let's stick Poison on there for now. Speaking of Ice Spikes is another one that we should definitely look to upgrade the area on. Simple to do, can definitely increase our damage potential. Only 66. So this is actually like a very early enhancement you can do. Certainly not like a really pressing one. You definitely want to concentrate on enhancing your moves with additional elements if that's, if you're struggling. At this point in time, there's not much point at level 9 me doing that, right? Because I've kind of, got rid of most of my small moves and things. But definitely getting an extra area on Ice Spikes is great. So you could use Primal Duality and add an additional element to this to allow you to create 3 elements, which basically just gives you that plus Crystallizing Blast gives you 4 elements for Simulacrum straight away without you even needing to draw any elements. But I think that's quite an expensive and all-in-one. I think most of your gold ultimately is probably going to end up going on items to begin with. If you play through the character multiple times though, then definitely enhancements are worth doing. And if you're playing on Guildmaster, you can definitely just start to look to increase the number of hexes on different things. Adding additional hex on Vengeance is 260 gold, but damn well brilliant. So yeah, I mean, again, any of these ones that you can really add to, like I said, you could, in theory, add a disarm here for 500. Now we're talking about, kid in a candy shop style stuff. But yeah, if you've got lots of gold, then why not? I will say that this character is not one that really benefits from the strengthen effect. So, quite typically an enhancement that most people would try and do would be to add strengthen onto any kind of heal effect. because especially on the bottom right, because then you're going to get strengthened for this turn attack, and then you're going to get strengthened for the next turn. But the Elementalist doesn't really care for that. The Elementalist has a very flat attack deck, like we talked about before, so Strengthen doesn't really have much benefit here. So I'd be much more likely to, you know, maybe you do this on an ally. It would be a nice thing to do to an ally, but it's certainly not something you need to really worry about. Actually, quite a good early game enhancement while we're kind of really doing the Shaping the Ether combo. You know, where we're doing our stun and our target 2, is to try and add on like fire onto Tremulent Cyclone, because if we can add fire onto here, it's 100 gold, then we can definitely kind of ensure that when we lead with our Tremulent Cyclone and Crystallizing Blast turn, we then have a follow-up of Shaping the Ether, you know, attacking 3, stun and target 2, which is, you know, very, very good. Okay guys, there we have it. There is the Elementalist guide. It was a long one and a long time in process. I really had to think about this one, do a lot of research, and again I would really like to shout out Themris. His post over on Reddit was really helpful in kind of collecting my thoughts and sort of vindicating some of my reasoning. I'm not the best Elementalist player out there. I'm certainly not one of my favorite characters to play myself, so I did need to lean on other resources for this. So absolutely, his guide is amazing, so I really do encourage you, if you want to do some further research on this character, to check it out, and links in the description below if you'd like to do that. If you did enjoy the video, you know the drill, toss it a like and subscribe. I've got many more Gloomhaven guides coming, one for every class eventually, and also if you click on my channel, there's some guides already up, so I have 8 guides up now, so 8 guides in total, and the next 2 guides coming will be the Sun class and the Lightning Bolt class, so they will be coming. I'm trying to do them in the order that they get released in Gloomhaven Digital, so because most of the people who kind of watch me on Twitch watch me playing Gloomhaven Digital, so we're going to be kind of doing the natural progression until we get all of the mercenaries out in digital. If you want to be one of those people who watches me play on Twitch, you can always come over to twitch.tv/ManageRequests, where I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Sunday Gloomhaven. So yeah, be one of those people in the chat, and yeah, we can talk about the classes together. Don't forget to pop any questions that you may have for the 1000 sub special Q&A in the comments below, and you know, if it's a good question, maybe I'll answer it. Also, we do have a community Discord server, so you can always ask me questions there if you want, so I'll put a link to the community Discord server below. There are people in there looking to play Gloomhaven Digital and looking for other people to play with, and we just talk about Gloomhaven and just anything really, so come hang out in a nice, chill, fun Discord community too. Well, that's about it guys. For the dedicated few that may have got this far, thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to catch you in the next video. Bye.
I think still, yeah.
Scout
That's the blessing from Scout. That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?